So at the moment, we have the HTML5 video with the controls displayed. And if we go ahead and start doing something like this, where we change the position on the actual video itself, our input type range updates. However, if we were to try it the other way around, you can see that we do not have any kind of scrubbing. And scrubbing is this dragging where we would expect to be able to change the position. So essentially, what we're going to do is jump into our code and we're going to start targeting some events on our input type range. So at the moment, if we have a look, we have our timeline and we have an event bound to our media object, which then on the time update, so every second, it then goes and sets that particular duration, which then sets the value. So we kind of have one-way data flow in that sense, where we are listening to an event and then passing the new data down to our input element. However, we don't have the data coming out of the element, which would give us the new position. Now, if you remember, we have our input type of range and we have minimum and maximum values. And we've done this so we can easily play with our percentages when calculating the progress of that particular video. So what we're going to do is create a new event which listens to our timeline. So let's go ahead and say timeline add event listener, and we're going to listen to the input event. This then gives us an event object, and inside our function, we're just going to log out the event.target.value. So let's save this out and just see what it gives us. So anytime we change this, we can see that we now have the particular percentage. We can drag it, and it's also incrementing or decrementing those numbers. So at this point, what we essentially want to do, because we're playing with percentages, we then want to calculate where in our video we want to set that particular position. So what we're going to do is grab our function. We're going to call this the skip to position function. Above our other event listeners, we can go and create that skip to position equals, and then assign it that function. So the first thing, if you have a look, and we should know this already, is that our input values are in fact strings. So the first thing that we want to do is parse this integer back to a number, and then we can start performing some calculation. So now we can drag things, and you can see that the numbers are in fact blue instead of black. So we're definitely dealing with a number at this point. Now, one thing that we can do is in fact divide this number by 100, and this then gives us a decimal to work with. So what we're then going to do is multiply our duration of the video and then set the current time. So instead of console logging this parse integer and our divide by 100, we're in fact going to log the media dot duration, and then above we're going to call this the position. So this is going to give us a new position on the timeline, which as we know is essentially a percentage. And the reason that we're doing this, if we go and take a look at our position and the duration, is we can easily calculate where to essentially set the marker because we have a number that's divisible by 100. So what we can essentially do, instead of logging both the values out, we can multiply our duration by this new position. So you can start to see when we start dragging our input, we're now recalculating the number in seconds where we want to position when we are then scrubbing our particular timeline. So instead of just logging this out, we're going to change this over to a property assignment. And that is going to be the current time, because we've used this current time. We've used it in calculating some of the progress here, as well as resetting the current time back to 0 when we essentially press stop. So this is allowing us to update that current time on the media object based on this new position that we are then given, which means that when we start dragging our HTML5 video, you can see that our input updates, and you can see that when we start dragging or clicking our input type range, our HTML video is also updating, and you can see that the seconds are also coming into effect. So we can start the video halfway through, press play, and you can see that we can scrub to any kind of position while the video is still playing, and then back to the beginning. So this is absolutely perfect. And this is allowing us to use the input type range to then easily set a new position. And all we're doing is taking our event target.value, dividing it by 100, so then we can easily multiply it to calculate a new position. And then we just simply set the current time property, because that allows us to then decide where on our media timeline we wish the new playback to begin.